Hey guys, Jen here. So I wanted to just clear something up that I've been hearing a lot about in this group and in other groups that I'm in and other fiction writers that I talk to. But there is something very, very important, and it's a very important distinction that you have to get. Because if you don't get this, you are never going to be the fiction writer that you could be. So there are two very distinct things that have to happen in a story. Number one, there has to be a protagonist with an inner demon that they're going to overcome by the end of the story. This is known as character arc. Then there also has to be an external antagonist. So this is going to be a bad guy who's in the external world, not in the character's head, not in their mind, but in the external world. So somebody they physically have to deal with, whether that's a bad guy or someone they know or someone they haven't met yet. That's all up to you. You get to be creative and have creative license when it comes to all of that. But you have to have the internal struggle and the external struggle. And a lot of times, and I would say probably more times than not, they work together. So the internal struggle is actually brought out and brought to light by the external antagonist who's trying to stop your protagonist from doing something. So your protagonist has a goal in the story, something that they want to accomplish or get done, and now the antagonist is going to come as an external force and try to stop them from making that goal happen. So because they have their own opposing force or opposing goal that they have, opposing reason that they want to, stop them. There's something there. And the bad guy being in the physical world actually brings out that internal demon that your character has. So let me kind of give you an example to explain. So in my novel Soundcheck, my main character, Mandy, her inner demon, her inner struggle, her inner antagonist is that she's a control freak. So that's sort of the thing she struggles with. Now, of course, she doesn't really have to deal with this too much because in her day-to-day life, she just does what she does, and it's not a big deal. But at the first plot point, when we get introduced to the bad guy, who is her boss, he's this, the director of marketing for her company, and he decides that because of something that happened with them, he is going to now sabotage her success, sabotage her goal of getting this promotion that she is absolutely entitled to. He's going to sabotage her getting it. So at the first plot point, we find out that that's the story, that's the case. This is what she's going to be dealing with. This is what her journey is going to be over the course of the rest of the story. And of course, because of the external antagonist, because of him trying to get in her way, trying to stop her from having success with her project, from stopping her from getting the promotion and all of that, this is all things that are out of her control. So of course that brings out her inner demon, which is control freak. So she's having to struggle with it, and she actually has to overcome the control freak in order to overcome the external bad guy, her boss. And of course she does overcome them both by the end of the story. That's known as character arc and plot working together. You have to have both of these things in your story. So right now, if you only have an internal struggle or you only have an internal antagonist, fine, you have character arc, and that's great, but you still need plot. And plot is an antagonistic force or an antagonist who is going to go up against your protagonist and try to stop them from getting what they want. Now, if you only have an external antagonist and you only have a bad guy who's trying to stop them, but you don't have an inner struggle or an inner demon that they have to deal with as they work through everything with the bad guy, then you need that instead. So you have to have both. And if you don't, you're going to end up what's known as an episodic narrative, which is when the story is just a character's life, day to day. Here are things that happen to them. This day this happened, then this happened. And maybe all of that is dramatic, and maybe it has a lot of conflict and there's a lot of stuff going on. But unless there's a bad guy that is opposing the goal that they have, someone who's trying to stop them from making that goal happen, and there's some sort of stakes involved, something that they could lose, that they're risking by involving themselves with this bad guy, you don't have an actual story. You have an episodic narrative. And the way to fix that is to make sure you have both an internal struggle and an external struggle. So I hope that clears it up for you, because that is exactly what it takes to write a good story. And if you don't have both of those pieces, your story is going to fall flat, and you are going to find yourself getting rejected from agents, getting rejected from publishers. And if you don't know why, that's a big reason why, because a lot of the times when I work with writers, the biggest thing I see is they don't have an antagonist. So they'll have an inner struggle or a character arc, but they don't have the external bad guy to play all of that up. And the thing you have to remember is a character is not going to deal with their internal struggle unless something on the outside is going to force them to deal with it. So in the case of my story, Mandy has to deal with being a control freak, because if she doesn't, she will never ever be successful with the project and with defeating the antagonist. It's impossible, because she has to give up control in order to make it happen. So that's why it's so important to have both, and that's why it's important for the internal struggle to match the external struggle, so that it brings it out more and causes the character to have to deal with it. Otherwise, the character's never going to deal with it by choice, because characters don't do that kind of stuff. In real life, we don't really deal with our inner struggles unless we have some reason to, something external that we're trying to do, a goal of some kind, or something we want that we can't have if we're still acting a certain way. Whatever. That's how it works in real life, and that's how it works in a story. Of course, in a story, it has to be cohesive, has to all go together, but the point is you need both, the external antagonist and the internal inner demon. So I hope this tip helped you, and I hope that if you have any other questions, you can just leave them in the comments, and I'd be happy to give you some, feedback and some additional advice on how to use character arc and plot together. And if you are doing NaNoWriMo this year and you want help actually creating an actual story, something that has an antagonist externally, something that has an inner demon, as well as a goal and all the other pieces, including structure and scene planning and all of that, so that when you sit down November 1st to start writing, you actually have a story worth writing, and you know where you're headed, and you're actually going to come out the other end with a draft that's worth doing something with, that actually is going to be an edit and a polish away from being publishable. If you want to do that and you're going to be, all in on Nano this year, then definitely check out my upcoming workshop. It starts on Monday, September 5th. So it's starting soon, so definitely check out the details as soon as you can. Right now we're in early bird, so if you get in before the early bird deadline, you'll actually get a really good discounted price plus a bunch of other bonuses. So be sure to go to jenniferblanchard.net/nano edition to check it out. That's NANOEDITION. Catch you next time.